Hello, everyone. It's Mike Merker here with People Solving Impossible Puzzles. It's episode 35, and I'm joined by the lovely Rachel Levy Sarfin. Did I get that right? Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike, for having me. So, as you can see from my background, I am a content writer, editor, and ghostwriter. And it's very interesting because I don't know if I necessarily to me, the problems I solve aren't impossible, but for the people who need them solved, they might seem like impossible problems. So,
Isn't that interesting? Whatever we're good at, we just know how to do it. We've done it
yes.
10 years, some people 50 years, 30 years. You walk into like a doctor's office and the doctor's like, "What's wrong?" They went to school for 10,
Yeah,
10
yeah,
years
yeah.
and such and such.
Yeah, for sure.
And what are you all about? What's your story?
So, that is, I don't know how long we have. I think we only have half an hour, so I'll try to make it very short.
We have as
Um,
long until my wife starts yelling, "Michael, we don't have any time for this. You should be making toys and selling them, and we need a bigger house and more things we can't afford." But anywho.
yeah. So to make a very long story short, I I started off as a journalist back in after I finished graduate school, which is another story entirely not for journalism. But I started working as a journalist back in about 2012. And then when the publication I was working for went under twice, I made the pivot into a field called content marketing. And I had been at a publication that dealt with the tech space in Canada. And so there were these content marketing agencies, which is basically using content to market to people, as the name implies. And they were looking for people who understood the tech industry and could write about it. And after a couple of years of working in that space, I'm like, well, I think I can write about the tech industry or for the tech industry. So I pivoted into that, and that's where I am now. In addition to writing, I also do editing and ghostwriting. The editing is sort of taking especially marketing materials and making them not just clear, but you want to make sure that when you have something for marketing, if it's a blog or if, you're writing a website, it needs to be not just grammatically correct, but you also have a certain set of messaging that you want to get across. And an editor helps you stick to that messaging, and they'll say, okay, well, this is not how this company talks about itself, or, we don't use the Oxford comma, or we do use the Oxford comma, but, it goes beyond the mechanics of the English language or whatever language an editor works in. And it's really about clarity of ideas, and making sure that those ideas are clear. And the ghostwriting part of what I do, back when I should take a step back. Through my career, I've been asked to write on behalf of executives, and these are executives who don't have the time to share their ideas with the world, but they do know that it's important to get those thoughts out there. So the ghostwriting has been, up until this point, writing thought leadership articles. So if they have like op-eds, there's a really burning issue in the industry and they want to talk about that, and maybe also work in how the company that they're working for can help solve that solution. That can be a really great way to use a ghostwriter, but there are many things for which you could use a ghostwriter. You could use them to write your LinkedIn posts or other social media posts. You can use them to write books. You can use them to write email newsletters. So the uses for a ghostwriter is really limited to your imagination and potentially your budget as well, depending on what you're working with.
Interesting. And for some younger people out there who are watching this, 15, 20, 25 years old. At what point in your life did you know that this is what you're all about? This is what Rachel's about?
That is such a good question. So I'll get back to when I said initially that I had this very long story. What I thought I wanted to do as a young girl, and then as a teenager, and then when I was in university, that evolved, and that's something that can happen. So when I was probably about 10, I thought I want to be a writer. I thought I would write books. I haven't gotten published yet, but maybe someday. And that kind of evolved as I got a little bit older into I want to be a journalist. And I thought that would be really exciting, traveling all over the world and covering all sorts of stories. I was in my first year of university. It was actually a couple of weeks in to my first year of university on September 11th, 2001. And there might be some people in the audience who remember that day very well. Or maybe you're watching who weren't born yet. But if you did not witness those events, it was one of the days that definitely the U.S. has ever known. I'm originally from the U.S. My husband's Canadian. That's why we're here. But just standing there and watching it, and then I was at university in New Jersey, so I wasn't very far from New York, and we're a little bit further from Washington, and we were hours away from Schwenksville, where the third plane crashed. It's in Pennsylvania. And watching this endless loop of coverage, I realized I don't know if I will be a journalist. This could involve reporting on some very awful, horrible things.
Yes.
So I became really interested in what really happened on September 11th, which was a terrible act of terrorism. And I wanted to understand what caused that to happen, like what were the roots of it. And so ultimately, after university, I did a degree in Middle Eastern Studies. I have a master's in that. And that was the timing really kind of not so great, because I finished in the summer of 2008. And a few weeks later, that was, again, for those of you who don't remember, it was a global economic crash. And so I had my goals had been, go work for a think tank and study these issues. But a lot of think tanks they're nonprofit organizations, and they became very vulnerable to what happened, this global financial crash. So I kind of had to figure out what next. And ultimately, after a few years of working in some jobs that were related to writing and editing, I wound up with a position at this publication that specialized in Canadian business-to-business technology. And like I said, that went from, I went there and then the publication went under, and that's when I decided to pivot to content marketing. So, I've always loved writing. That has been the one constant throughout my life. And I really enjoy editing as well. That's something I learned along the way. And ghostwriting is an extension of writing, and I really love the ability to tell stories. And even if they're not my stories, they're stories. So ghostwriting is ultimately telling someone else's story. So those themes have remained constant. So I think, you 15, that I really like coding, and, I want to be a software developer. Maybe, I don't know. But I think it's kind of the underlying values or the underlying things that you love to do. So writing, that hasn't changed. I don't think that's ever going to change. I see that happening. So I think as long as I'm in a position where I get to do those things, then that's good.
Interesting. And can you explain a little bit more of what as you mentioned, an op-ed is for us non-reading, non-linguistic engineers?
Yeah. So an op-ed is basically an opinion piece, editorials. It's a journalism term. So, back in the day when they had print newspapers, you'd have a section where people would write columns about things that they thought. When it comes to more of the marketing stuff, an op-ed is probably not an op-ed is more of a neutral term. When it comes to marketing, obviously, it's not really so neutral. You are ultimately trying to sell a product with these thought leadership is maybe the better term. I know people have various opinions on that term, but I mean, that's kind of the term that is used within the market. And basically the idea is that you are saying this is a problem that exists. This is, you don't have to be afraid of this problem because you can solve it. You can solve it with this solution. So
interesting. And ghostwriting. What's that all about? What is, to a non-initiated, a person who's tech people are all all those guys who are afraid to talk to women, who I know hundreds of, and all those staring at screens all day and like their little gadgets. Why is that important? Ghostwriting.
Sure. So even in today's world where we're using AI, you still have to, if you're going to be cited by an LLM, you still have to have a unique point of view. And ghostwriting, let's say you are someone who writing maybe isn't your strength, maybe you're better at doing something else, or maybe you can write well, but you just don't have the time. The idea is that you work with someone and that person will write it for you. You share your opinions and the person, writes it and creates the content that you need. So to use an example, there was one point where I was working for a company where I ghost wrote for an executive. This was a person who this person was an industry expert. The problem was that the person, because they were an executive, they were very, very busy and they didn't have the time to be able to write thought leadership articles themselves. And as it was very crucial, because in a leadership, you are part of your company's marketing efforts. You are one of the faces of the company. So even if, I don't really have time to do this, it's kind of the expectation that, you as a senior leader participating in these marketing efforts so that, you build trust. Because me as, Rachel Levy Sarfin, I'm not a senior leader. If I say, for example, there is a problem with using, the prefabricated furniture leads to waste in landfills. My company's recycling solution can change that. This is a complete fabrication. That's not what I do right now. But if I were to say that as just like, I'm a content writer, no one would care. If I were Levy Sarfin, the head of environmental waste management or whatever at this company, something like a senior leadership role, if I had 30 years of experience working in environmental engineering and I had that expertise, people would pay more attention. So when you have those people who have all that expertise but don't necessarily have the time, the ghostwriter can help them get out those marketing messages so that they can represent the company and convince people, this is a trusted person in the industry, I should pay attention.
Oh, interesting. So it's not so much what the message is as much as, or the message is important, of course, but it has to come from the right official or the right leader or the right, even the thoughts themselves, the writing, the speech writer of like a president is different than the president of the U.S. or prime minister, a world leader giving the speech. So ghostwriting's like the speech writing. Interesting. So interesting. And I cyber-stalked a little bit while I'm on your LinkedIn page, and I'm seeing that you're doing content writing, as you said, editor, ghostwriter, but in the B2B tech space. Why do B2B techies? Why do the techies really need a writer?
So, because your audience might not necessarily be other tech people, especially today. I think in the past 15 to 20 years, what we're seeing in the B2B space and even in the B2C space is that the people who are buying software are not necessarily chief procurement officers. It might be, the chief marketing officer is making a decision to purchase this software. And they're not necessarily a technical person. Maybe they are, maybe they have some kind of technical knowledge, but you as a tech founder, or a chief technology officer, you need to be able to explain your product in many cases to non-technical audiences. And even if you have a technical audience, it's not necessarily clear why your product or solution is important. Like, you cannot just go out there and say, I invented, I don't know, I've created a new LLM model, whatever, just using this as an example. You have to be able to say why that matters, because if you cannot explain to people, you have this, I see that you have this problem, or here's a problem maybe you didn't even think of, my solution can help, no one is going to know that you exist. So you do need, among other things, I'm not going to go out there and say writing is the be all and end all of marketing. Writing is part of that in some way, shape, or form. But you do need to be able to have someone who can share that message for you, because if you just say, here's my product, buy it, that is not going to work.
That's not going to work. Going deeper into that, the person who invents some crazy tech thingy or some new software, the customer, the user who will use it, may not be coming from the same jargon, the same background. So, of course, we have to bridge the gap between the person who's, the techie and the mad scientist in the basement in front of the computers to normal accountant who's using some new tool. And that is a matter of storytelling and clearly educating and informing, and that's important, because that's important to have a clean communications and messaging, because why going deeper into it.
Okay, so that is an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up, because you have your company might start off with one product, but maybe you create another product. We'll use the example, I know I talked a minute ago about that. So IKEA doesn't just sell, bookshelves. Many of us might know, the Billy bookshelf or whatever. It sells a whole bunch of stuff. It's not about you just saying, okay, you need to buy our product because you need a place to store your books. It's about the company as a whole. The company has to be able to say what it stands for. And so that is where the writing comes in. And that's why you kind of need that strategy and that overarching brand identity.
Why does the techie need such clear communication?
So I am very glad that you asked that, because I think a lot of people don't understand why. It's about creating a brand identity. When people buy something from you, they want to know who you are as a company, not just about that one product. You're not just selling that one product, you're selling your company. And they need to know that they can trust you and what your values are. So they need to know that you are going to do what you say you do, that your solution is going to do what you say it does. And writing can communicate those things. You can talk about, how your approach to solution, you can talk about, the things that inform your work. You can talk about your industry expertise. So if going back to a previous example about IKEA, let's say you want to be the next IKEA, you maybe want to talk about, you brought in this experience in creating affordable furniture, just as a kind of an example.
Very good, very good. And what about the difference between blogging, professional writing, and let's say like marketing material? Are those really all the same thing?
So blogging is something that you can do as a non-professional, like I have a blog on my portfolio site that is kind of, I wouldn't say personal. It talks about, marketing concepts, but there are many people who have blogs on all sorts of topics. And I think nowadays we're evolving from the blog to the newsletter. Substack, the rise of Substack would certainly point to that.
I love Substack.
Yeah. But marketing encompasses many different activities, one of which is called content marketing. And like I said, the name implies you're marketing to people through content. One of those tools can be a blog post, but it can also be, a webinar. It can also be an ebook. It could be a customer success story. So when it comes to content marketing, there's more than one tool in your toolkit aside from blogging. I mean, I think blogging can be very important because many people recognize blogs as a good way to get information about a given topic. But there are definitely many other types of content that you can use in content marketing, and marketing in and of itself is a very large, it's an umbrella for a number of different activities.
Yes. And some other, I guess, thinking about some people I'm around, different, I guess, founders or product managers. They suck, myself included. They never tell a good story. They're always throwing in, all the cybersecurity jargon, or they're talking about too much how the database is set up. But normal, effective communication in written form, we're talking to, the audience has to understand what we're talking about. If you're talking to doctors, you throw in all the doctory terms.
Yeah.
What about the jargon? How are we supposed to navigate the jargonness of a specialty versus, hey, this needs to go on LinkedIn so I don't look like a complete, schlemazel over here?
Well, so you made a really good point. It's about your audience. So if your audience is a group of technical professionals, so you are in toys, you create toys that are, in the music field, right? So you are going to be you're going to be using more technical terms for your audience, because you don't want your audience to say, well, I know all this already. Why is he writing like I'm a 2-year-old? I know this. So It is about understanding your audience and respecting your audience, and also knowing that you're not writing for everybody. And to your point about LinkedIn, from what I understand, they're changing the way that it works. So you're not writing to your network, because your network might contain people that are not within your industry or technical experts. So now people will see it if it's in their interests. So which can sometimes play around with your reach, but something I have many thoughts on reach.
Give some thoughts.
Believe me, we don't have time for that. But yeah, so you might now on LinkedIn, and this is really only relevant like at this very moment in time, because who knows, LinkedIn could change it again. The idea is that people who are interested in that topic will more likely see your post because you're writing to them. And writing advice that I have received is that you want to make what you're writing for one person, and you want to make them feel like, oh my gosh, he gets it. He gets me. He gets what I'm going through. He gets my issues. So, I mean, that's what I try to do. I don't know if I always succeed, because one of the things about writing is that it is iterative. You don't just do one draft and you're done. It's most likely going to go through multiple rounds of revisions. And even during the writing process, even if you're writing something for yourself, I have had LinkedIn posts that I've written, or I've written multiple drafts, where it's like, it's stupid how many drafts I've written, but I want to get it right. I want to be able to look at it and say, yes, that is what I meant to say. So
Is that kosher? Is that okay? It took me one time like 10 times to do like a short. Someone's like, "Mike, we need a bio, 50 words." I spent like 2 hours playing around with how what I should say, how much I should fabricate, where I might the man I would want to be in the future, the little bit of truth. It's sort of, are we allowed to do that? A little bit future self, a little bit fraud, a little bit truth. Is that the way to do it?
Definitely not. You should
Oops.
definitely not be fabricating anything, because the thing is, people can very
A
easily
joke.
be like, no, that is not true. I could say I have a degree from Harvard in astrophysics, but it would not take. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the show Suits, but
I
the
love
premise is
Suits.
that
Yes. Yes.
this guy, pretends that he's a Harvard educator. And I don't want to spoil it for people.
Spoiler,
but,
we won't spoil
that's not a, well, it's suffice it to say, it's a charade that he cannot maintain forever. And so, it might work in the very short term, but people are going to call you out. And these days, it doesn't take a lot of time or effort to be able to figure out that someone is not who they say they are. And that can be exposed through inconsistencies in social media profiles and, information
Brilliant.
about you on the internet. So don't fabricate stuff is the short answer.
So Rachel, you're an advocate of the importance of being genuine and the importance of not to fabricate but how are we supposed to, don't we have to be like a peacock and fluff ourselves up? I know lots of people, founder and CEO of a company, there's no revenue, there's no real company. Is that one way to present yourself and communicate your message, or is that a bit of a fugazi, a bit of a faulty way?
Yeah. I think, again, people can figure that out, eventually. It might not be right away, but it's not a charade that you will be able to maintain for a very long time. There are many cases of founders being exposed for not being who they say they are. So I would say maybe you can say, and I think actually you bring up a very good point, because authenticity, I think, is being rewarded more on LinkedIn. And apparently LinkedIn really likes these posts where you talk about what you've learned. That can actually apparently generate a lot of reach. So if you're saying, I am working as a founder, this is what I am struggling with right now, but these are, this is what I've learned, and these are maybe some of my wins. Yeah, you do need to build yourself up, but you also need to be honest. And if your company, if you don't have revenue as of yet, you need to be talking about your challenges that you're working on and how you're working to fix them, because apparently people really like hearing about what you've learned. And apparently those are the posts that are getting a lot of traction nowadays.
Interesting. And we brought up LinkedIn a bit and Substack. Which platforms, social media or general places of blogging, what are your favorite? What are some of your favorite tools or platforms for getting the online version of yourself,
Right.
your digital, what do we call it?
My digital presence.
Digital presence. That sounds a lot better than my AI avatar representation. Big words for little things. What's your style? What's your way?
So, I mean, that is a good question. So I started off on social media using Facebook way back in 2004. I'm old. But I kind of evolved over the years. At a certain point, I actually took like a 2-year break from Facebook, and it was great. I now have really used Facebook for like this 1 or 2 groups that I'm in, but that's it. I, for fun, use Instagram, but that's not kind of like where my presence is. I have a Medium account. So Medium is the forerunner to Substack. So it's a place where you can, share articles. So I do post on Medium every few months. I spend a lot of time, potentially unhealthy amounts of time, on LinkedIn. I started using LinkedIn way back in 2009, but I didn't really understand how I was supposed to leverage it, because at that point I was still like really using Facebook quite heavily. And I'm like, well, this is not like Facebook and I don't really get it. So I kind of I would use it periodically, but not heavily. And then in 2023, I lost my job and I went to this workshop run by the Jewish Vocational Services of Toronto. And they talked about how to use LinkedIn. And I wound up spending a lot of time on LinkedIn. So I still spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And I've gotten to the point where I post 3 to 5 times per week. And I find that can be a great place to connect with like-minded people. It can be a great way to learn more about what's going on in your industry. There are some not so great things about LinkedIn, and that is a much longer conversation. I don't have enough time for that.
It's okay.
That can go on all day.
Say one thing you hate. I'll go first. One thing I really hate about LinkedIn is when sometimes I'm, doing maybe a little bit of mentorship, or someone reaches out and they've never done a patent before, or they never did like a toy design, or they never did a Udemy coding course before, and I talk to them, right? And then they always say, it's always the same thing, but I saw on LinkedIn this person posted this, or this person did this. And my pet peeve is, as a 42-year-old guy with a yarmulke and a wife and 5 kids and a messy basement, I always say, what I post online is itself a fabrication and not the real me. And so everyone else, that's not real life. That's people hiding, or used to be people hiding things. And here we're talking about that being vulnerable is becoming great a little bit. And what are one or two of your pet peeves? I said mine.
Yeah, so I would say that they don't always enforce their terms of, unfortunately, you might see someone who's getting away with what could be construed in many people's eyes as sexual harassment. And LinkedIn is, you report it, and LinkedIn is like, no, this doesn't violate our terms of service. And I'm like, well, no, but this is really inappropriate. So that is a thing that I really hope that they're working on.
Or touching a little bit on that before we circle back to the main thing, how come women are always being harassed it's one thing in real life, this has been going on a while, but online, LinkedIn, I know a guy, it's like, I messaged 11 women on LinkedIn. I'm like, no, that's not, this is not Tinder. This is not a kosher place for pursuing romantic interests. And I've seen many a gentleman, I won't name any names, Shlomo, take that elsewhere.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I think it isn't just necessarily a LinkedIn problem. It's a problem with people, and it's mainly men, not just men, but mainly men.
We're calling out the men. We're calling out the men on LinkedIn.
I think there are some women who do it too. Yes. I do think it is largely men, unfortunately, who just don't have boundaries, and they just don't say oh, well, maybe this isn't the right place to be meeting women, but, they do it anyway. So.
and we'll switch off that topic. What are some other things that we haven't covered about what your skills as a writer, or other areas in writing in general, content writing?
That is a good question. There is a lot to to writing, because like I said, you don't just sit down and, produce a brilliant first draft. That's almost impossible. Like, the idea is that you have to work on it. Writing is ultimately a thinking exercise. And if you don't have thoughts, you're not going to get very far. So you really have to think, you have to refine. So that would be the one thing I would want to leave the audience with. I would also say, and I've learned this as a writer, the editor is not out to get you. They're not out to criticize your writing. A good editor wants to make your writing better. A good writer and a good editor wants your writing to shine and to make sure that your writing is consistent. If you're working within a marketing context, a good editor wants to make sure that you are doing what you can to protect the company's brand, and that you're, using consistent messaging and a variety of other things to make sure that, like, this is what the company should be saying. And one thing I'd want to leave the audience with about ghostwriting is that it's, it would be, I don't want to compare it to like hiring somebody to install a new roof on your house, but a ghostwriter is a service professional. And I would say that the big difference is you can hire somebody to install a roof for your house and you don't really have to be involved. You can just be, downstairs, whatever. Like, they're the ones who are up there on the roof, hopefully not risking their lives to put a new roof on your house. But the thing is, with a ghostwriter, you do have to be involved in the process. You do have to share your ideas in some way, shape, or form. Either, you sit down with the ghostwriter in person or through any kind of digital conferencing platform, or maybe you share an outline because you are a very busy person and you need to get your thoughts on paper. And that's a good way for the ghostwriter to understand what you're trying to communicate. But this is not a complete do-it-for-you process. You need to invest time and effort. And if this is something, you want to write memoirs, or you're hiring somebody to ghostwrite your LinkedIn posts, it's also going to be an investment of money as well. And it is not going to be a successful working relationship if you do not make the time to share your ideas.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel, for opening all our eyes to this beautiful world that we may not be realizing how complicated it really is to say the right thing in the right way and with the right brand message. And any final thoughts for the last minute? Words of wisdom?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity. This was great. I'm really glad I got to hopefully clear up some misconceptions about writing and editing. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you very much.
And Rachel, for those who want to read some of your beautiful works and follow you outside of LinkedIn, is there any place where we can grab onto your literary wisdom?
Yes, so I have a portfolio. My portfolio contains a blog, and I do make an effort to post to that. LinkedIn is probably the place where you'll see me most regularly, so people can feel free to follow me there as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, and we look forward to maybe we'll have you on again in a couple weeks, if you wish.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate this. And yeah, have a fantastic rest of your day.